Okay, welcome everybody. Today we will continue with the discussion on China and US, especially trade war. Now,
Yes,
the declared objectives of announcing the
did you
reciprocal
click on
tariffs
the
on all
down at the
countries
bottom on the right? You clicked on something.
is the sorry, I think I who is not mute. Yeah, everybody's mute. Okay. Uh, the declared objective is twofold. One, to address the trade deficit. Second, to bring manufacturing back to United States. Uh, Now, supporting the hegemony of United States is based on, I think, um, at least three pillars, or you can say four. Number one, the US dollars being the world's reserve currency as well as trading currency. That enable United States to just print money, and then the money printed is able to buy up resources or services from around the world. In order to do that, then United States dollars, US dollars, must be circulating around the world. In order to supply a constant flow of US currency, the US dollars, the US trade must be a deficit trade. That means more people is willing to sell items to United States in order to get the US dollars. If the United States has a trade surplus, that means the amount of goods flowing out from United States is valued as smaller than the amount flowing in. That means the United States will be extracting the US dollars from the rest of the world. And therefore, the idea that this trade war will revert the situations of United States dollars is a bit against one of its strengths, a pillar. The other pillars, for example, the um, military power, yes, it is very strong because United States can outspend all the countries in its defense. The United States defense budget is the next, say, 5 to 6 at least, the, the largest military expense countries add up together, and it's still greater than that. Now, at the moment, China is the second largest spender in military after United States, but it is only about one third the the amount of the United States. Then we have a lot of other countries following up. The ability to uh, allocate so much money for military is based on its ability to print money. If the government cannot print money, then it can't finance the military. Now, at the same time, we know that the US government runs a huge deficit budget. At the moment, the US government has a debt of around $36 billion. The United States total GDP is about 28 something, almost 30 trillion dollars. That means it is already over 100% of its GDP in one year. But At the moment, the United States is also spending about, in 100 days, $1 trillion. That means every year it has to increase its debt by about $3.5 trillion in order to meet its expenses after collecting all the money. So this US dollars debt, the government debt, has a very large portion is bought by the US citizens. So that is domestic problem. But there are countries who bought a lot of US government bonds. The number one country having the largest amount of government debt, US government debt, is Japan. It has over $1 trillion. Of course, $1 trillion out of this 36 trillion is only about 2 to 3%. But the $1 trillion could leverage on the future interests of the US dollars government debts. I will come to that a little bit later on. The second largest holder of US government debts is now United Kingdom. It just surpassed China by about $20 billion. It is sitting at around $7,000 billion. So these two countries combined represent about $1.5 trillion of US debts, plus the Japanese 1.1 something. So about 10% of the US dollar debt are in these three countries, in the hand of Japan, in the hand of the United Kingdom, and China. Just last week, the US Treasury tried to sell $20 billion of 20 years US bonds. Just 20 billion, not much. But there was no ticker until the interest is over 5%. Now, let's look at just what does it mean by 5%, 5% per annum. If this 5% applies to all the $36 billion, then it will represent about 1.8 billion dollars. $1.8 billion. The total US tax income is around 3 trillion. That means about half of that will have to be used to service the interest. Of course, at the moment, the overall interest on US government debts is not 5%, because there are many loans which was made many years ago when the interest is low. What is coming up in June is that there is about $6 trillion of short-term US loan, which is 5 years, is due for renewal. That means either US government pay to the holder, the creditors, or it had to borrow new money in order to pay for the old loans. This loans was made in 2020 during the COVID. At that time, the interest rate is almost zero. But now with the current atmosphere, I don't think US government is able to renew the loan at almost 0% interest. More likely at about 5%. Modi has recently downgraded the credit rating of United States from AAA to AA1. That means a lot of funds, the pension funds, etc., a lot of funds have regulations limiting the manager of these funds to invest only in 3AAA products. That means these pension funds need to renew their U.S. government bonds to other category of assets. That means we will be seeing a stream of U.S. government bonds flowing out continuously when these fund managers try to put their portfolio back into its regulations. And that's probably the reason why last Wednesday was considered one of the Black Wednesday in U.S. financial situation. The increase in government bonds also trigger the collapse of the U.S. dollars and the U.S. stock market. Remember, there was a prime minister in UK, I think it's about 2 or 3 years ago. She only worked for 47 days. One of the reasons is her budget caused the same situation which we see today in United States. The collapse of the UK's bond market, the collapse of UK stock market, and the collapse of the UK imperial pounds. So these three factors together caused the downfall of, I can't remember her name. I think it's something Truss or Truss, something like that. Okay, a female prime minister. But in United States, that won't happen because after being elected, Trump can practically be a dictator until the next president comes along. So that is why United States doesn't see a big collapse. And of course, there are a lot of people interested to keep the U.S. System running because we have invested so much in the U.S. Financial system. U.S. dollars being a global reserve currency also means that many governments hold quite a bit of U.S. bonds in order to support their own currency. IMF have released a report saying that about 60% of all the world's government's reserve is US dollar or US bonds. So if the US financial system collapse, then we will see a global financial crisis. That's why people doesn't really want US government to collapse. But the action taken by the Trump administration is bringing United States towards that situation. Now, I have explained about the U.S. Strength. One of the strength is U.S. dollars. Since the Russia-Ukraine war, a lot of countries are now switching away from trading using U.S. dollars because during the Biden administration, Biden weaponized U.S. dollars. It seizes the Russians' U.S. dollars assets. Frozen even is trading account, which has about 100 million U.S. dollars in it. That threat. Most of the, for example, the BRICS countries or the Asian countries or the rest of the world basically, except us, which is Australia, New Zealand, maybe include Japan and South Korea and then the EU plus United Kingdom. Except us, the rest of the world is now trying to move away from US dollars because nobody wants to be held at a decision by the US president, and then suddenly you find yourself in the situation like Russia. You cannot trade using US dollars because all US assets is seized by the US. So it is not going to sell its oil in US dollars, which Russia used to do. Russia also cannot sell its oil in the EU US dollar, EU dollars, because again, EU sanctioned along with the rest, with us, the Russia. Therefore, it cannot sell its oil in both US dollars and EU dollars. So what they can do? Well, they come up with the idea that you want to buy Russian oil, use Russians ruby. So that was a shock to the rest of the world, but also remind us that we need to think carefully how involved we want to be using US dollars, because a decision by the US president can change your ability to trade with the world if you continue to use US dollars. That means the pillar which support the strength of United States being eroded by Trump's decision. Now we talk about another objective. Trump want to bring manufacturing back to United States. After the at the end of the Second World War, United States basically able to build one ship a week. But now the amount of shipbuilding is less than 1% in the world's capacity. China surpassed both Japan and South Korea in shipbuilding. China is building approximately slightly less than half of the world's shipbuilding at the moment. The other half is shared between Japan and South Korea, and almost nobody else is significantly building ships. Almost none. Of course, United States still builds war vessels, for example, submarines. But unfortunately, its ability to build is now talking about 10 years or more for one submarine. And if there is a war between, let's say, United States with either Russia or China, then if both countries or any of the country does not involve using nuclear weapons, using conventional weapons, then the first wave of contact will destroy most of the assets both countries have. Then it is about industrial capability. How fast you can produce your next wave of weapons in order to beat your opponent. United States lost that ability long time ago. There are several reasons why. First of all is, of course, the China's opening up. After Chairman Mao died, Deng Xiaoping opened up China and released 1.4 billion people into the global workforce. This sudden release of workforce is being used by many corporations. They see the opportunity of producing their goods much cheaper than produced in United States because we have a surplus of labor. Unfortunately, not in United States. Is in area with lower living standards, of course, including China. At that point, China is really, really poor. So many of these corporations move their production from US to the less developed countries. Initially to the four Asian dragons, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, and so forth. This is the first wave of moving the production out of America because the companies sees that it is able to produce the same product with a lower cost and being profit driven. They rush over that, and then followed by the release of labor into the world market. Therefore, a lot of production started moving to China and hollow out the US manufacturing capability. So in order to rebuild US manufacturing, we need to look at the overall profit generating scenarios in United States. Now, most of the company moving their production out to, say, China, or nowadays starting to move into India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, etc. What they see that we can keep the design of the products, the technology of the product, and then outsource the production to this area with lower costs. So, for example, take the iPhone. Let's say an iPhone have a retail price of $1,000, whatever that means. Just take an arbitrary number. All the parts, all the labor and assembling the phones will be about 10%. The other 90% is divided into almost two parts. Half of it go to Apple because they design it, they manage their retail, etc. And the other half of the profit go to the retails. So that's why they keep on producing, because they need that profit in order to continuous research and build better products. For example, the shoe company Nike, it has no shoe manufacturing ability. It is a brand, they hold the brand. It is a design. They have a lot of designers to design new shoes, and the shoes are produced initially in China. Now, this shoe manufacturing is now progressively moved to Vietnam, Bangladesh, or the Southeast Asia. Lower production costs. Obviously, US is not interested in moving this type of low value adding manufacturing back to United States. What a point. This, for example, the Chinese company making an iPhone, the total percentage of the retail value of an iPhone in manufacturing is less than 3%. Less than 3%. So I don't think any US venture would be interested in only making 3% profit. And the 3% is the total cost Apple paid to get the phone built. And therefore, building the phone also, you need workers, you need factories, you need tooling, you need all kinds of things. So the actual profit for building the iPhone is less than 1% of the iPhone value. So no company in the United States is interested in that. They need to move into future industries. If you move in the future industry, the industry doesn't have any IP at the moment. They're new. Therefore, you move in, build the IP, use the IP to design your product, and then get the product built somewhere else. Because building the product somewhere else is much cheaper than building in United States. That is the current model. That is the current model running in the United States since the 1980s. It has been running for the past 40 years. To change that, either you can outproduce those factories, for example, in China or in Vietnam or in Bangladesh, India, etc. How can you outproduce that? Yes, there's a possibility using robotics. United States was once the leader in industrial robots. The Ford car company has introduced robots in 1960s. But today, China represents about 70% of the robots being built in the world. There are still a number of robotic companies in the United States, but unfortunately, their competitive edge is now being closed up, almost being catch up by robotic companies from around the world. The main reason why is about innovation. And you want to innovate, you need user experience. You need to see where you can improve the efficiency. This kind of observation cannot be done in the office environment. You need to go to the floor, look at the production, and see where you see advantages of improving the efficiency. Unfortunately, the US companies concentrated on design or innovation. Unfortunately, the innovation is not being fed with real world data because they are not on the factory floor. They can't see what is happening, and therefore they can't innovate. Yes, we see a lot of innovation in terms of business. We have different types of business model coming up, and some of them is very successful because they are in the field. They are working with this business model. Therefore, they can improve and produce new business models. But in terms of producing manufacturing, they can't because they are not on the floor. They don't see the innovation. And for companies like, for example, Nike, they actually has engineers stationed in the production floor in China, in Vietnam, in Bangladesh, etc. They observe and then also study the new material available and then feed it back into the design studio. That's how they become successful. But once that is broken, then you don't have data feeding the innovation, and therefore innovation will stop. And the other thing is about ideology. Trump has stopped all renewable energy projects, including a big wind farm approved by Biden, but because the project haven't started, it is canceled by Trump. Trump rejects all renewable energy. Therefore, U.S. companies are not in the field to produce the next industry in green technology because the ideology, the government cut off all support to anything renewable. They don't have the funding. They can't do it. Another is the profit generator. At the moment, at the moment, the American company manufacturing cars within United States are those, for example, pickup truck, which they have put a high tariffs so that other countries importing pickup cars into United States will be charged a high premium in terms of tariffs, and therefore it protected its car industry in United States. But you ask this car company to invest in a new technology, for example, EV, they won't, because they see the new car is eating into its profit center. This has happened many, many times over in the past. For example, Kodak was the first company which produced digital camera, but unfortunately, they put that into shelf because they want to protect their film business. But nowadays, Kodak is not yet nowhere to be seen in this digital camera space, almost zero. Because although they are the first one noticing it, build a prototype, but that prototype eats into its current profit center. Therefore, the executives stop the project. No, you can't go there because if we continue with digital, then our most making money product cannot be sold. Simple, very simple. And therefore, we see that America are not moving into new industries, whereas the rest of the world is moving in. So if Trump want to move his industry back to United States, he should have invested in research, find support a few industry first, not this blanket tariffs. Because this blanket tariffs also mean that if somebody want to build a factory in United States to produce anything, okay, even clothing. At the moment, you want to produce clothing, you need, for example, cotton. You need, and then the cotton need to be split into threads, and then made into cloths, and then the dyes, the changing the color, printing, cutting, and then eventually make it into a garment and then sell it. The whole chain. Depending on which point you want to go in, you can go in as a farmer, produce cotton, or you can go in as a textile manufacturing, building clothes, or you can go in actually at the end as a fashion designer. Among this value chain, the highest value is at the end, not at the beginning. Now, if the highest value is at the beginning, then the rest will be very, very expensive, will explode. So a value chain is always the earlier the chain, the more volume you need to make it cheap in order to profitable. And then the value increase every stage. At the very end, the last stage is usually the most valuable, highest value add. But that also means you depend on a lot of inputs from the past. So if there is a designer wanting to open a shop in United States to produce top fashion clothing, For example, Victoria's Secret was one of those companies. It concentration on a small niche area, women's underwear, and then focus it to the extreme. It becomes a successful company. But unfortunately, again, because of ideology, Victoria's Secret, it will either go bankrupt or have to restructure. But that's another story. Okay, coming back. Now, in this long value chain, Trump's is tariffs on everything. That means the whole value chain, either you do it within United States or when you import from anywhere around the world, you have the tariffs. Whereas the rest of the world, if they do the same, they don't have to suffer these tariffs. For example, you import cloths, then the cloths being produced, say, in China, 145% tariffs. You basically can't buy it from China. And the so-called chain here, in the logistic chain, in each step, United States doesn't have the complete industries because it lost industry from 80s onwards. To rebuild this value, the whole chain, it won't take 4 years. It will need 10, 20, or 30 years to rebuild it. But Trump's presidency is only 4 years. Who knows what, after Trump, how the president will do it? That is a real problem. If I want to invest to build a factory in the United States, can I recruit my investment before Trump leaves office? The answer is very simple. No, you can't. If you want to do a manufacturing, you need to find the land, get government approval, build the factory, import the machineries, and then import the raw materials, and then start doing it. That will take 1 year, 2 years, and then in the next 2 years, can you make the profit to repay what you have invested? Very unlikely. And therefore, the whole idea of using tariffs to bring manufacturing back to the United States is a false idea. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So if you look at in that perspective, I think a lot of countries need to start thinking, is globalization really dead? Or globalization is dead only for a small number of countries? At the moment, looking at the current world situation, China is catching up. China manufacturing is leading the world. China's research output is now leading the world, except in life sciences. Pharmacy is still a weak point in China, but it is catching up. In terms of the upcoming industries, robotics, China is producing more than the rest of the world. In terms of shipbuilding, China almost built half of it. In terms of steel production, China is producing about 98% of the world production. And the also interesting point is there's no overproduction, because out of this 98%, China use its own 98%. A very small amount of steel is flowing out from China. China is also the largest producer of aluminium, copper, whatever, you name it. Yes, China doesn't have the ore. It ship in all the ore from around the world, including from Australia. We are selling China a lot of iron ore. What does it mean? It means that all this production, what is considered byproduct or waste, are now in China. China has a lot this kind of waste. And from that waste, out come the rare minerals, rare earth, rare metal. Yes, they are rare. That means you have to have a large collection of ore in order to find that little fraction of that particular material. Yes, this is rare. But if you don't process ore to produce whatever metal you want to produce, you don't have that little amount of waste which contain the most valuable rare earth material. Actually, rare earth material is not expensive. It's not very expensive because there's no use until we find that, we can use it in making magnets, or we can use it in making high power semiconductors. Until that, they are sitting at waste. And China has been collecting that for almost 40 years. And therefore, China has a lot of this. And to extract that, you also need chemistry, industrial scale chemistry. Yes, United States is able to extract that, but where do you find that byproduct to extract? You don't have a byproduct. You have to ship the byproduct, and because it's rare, that means maybe in 1 ton of that thing you may get a kilogram, but are you going to ship in 1 million kilogram to just get one ton, whereas you can buy it from China cheap? Now, in this trade war, China is using what the American has been using, the tactics. Remember, United States tried to block China's use of high-end semiconductors, including how to manufacture semiconductors, the so-called EUV lithography machines. So, you can block essential tools that I want. The China said, yes, I can do the same on you. I'm blocking the selling of rare earth to US. Of course, not all US companies are blocked. Only those which is related to military. Very sound argument. China support peace. Therefore, we don't sell this to your weapon manufacturer. Very high moral standing. But in fact, it's a tactic against US. You hold on us with the semiconductors, then I can hold on you with the rare earth. And at the same time, having a population almost 4 to 4.5 times the US, also in this authoritarian government situation, where the government can point out the path for the rest of the Chinese companies to work towards. So by investing in semiconductor manufacturing, China is now catching up. At the moment, the best semiconductor producing company is TSMA, MC, the Taiwanese Semiconductor Corporation. Taiwanese. Biden forced this company to build a hub, a manufacturing hub in United States. Yes, the factory has been built and it can go into production. Unfortunately, the successful rate is still below industrial standards. That means this factory is not making profit. This is already almost 4 years, about 3 years. And when can these factories make profit to support itself? Maybe another 5 years. And then recoup the investment 10, 20 years. This is what we are talking about. The current high-end value industries are all capital intensive, very, very capital intensive. So I talk about shipbuilding, steel manufacturing, etc. And then we'll come to the next one is, of course, artificial intelligence, AI. I think the US stock market is going to collapse because I see this as another bubble. It's the AI bubble. Until early this year, you want to produce a good artificial intelligence model, AI models. You need high-end GPUs. And high-end GPUs are all produced by one company, NVIDIA. And therefore, NVIDIA's stock price compared with 5 years ago has increased 80-fold, not 80%, 80-fold. But in January this year, when DeepSeek is released into the world, we saw NVIDIA's price drop by 8%, a huge drop. And then, of course, now it's recovered. Now, you know, I use AI to do my research. So we are talking about how much we have to pay in order to do AI research. There are several ways to do it. One way is to download the AI model and then run it locally. That means you don't have to pay the online fees to run AI models. But there's a drawback on that one. That means I need a powerful computer to run it. What I mean by powerful, I mean a computer maybe at least 30,000 Australian dollars in order to run it. Very expensive, at least to pensioner like me. The other way is, of course, go online, use the online models. These models depends on the usage. So you pay for a certain amount of use by a certain amount of numbers. So some of that is prepay, some of that is postpay, all kind of pricing models. All these models mostly are closed. That means you either use it online or you pay for a fee and then download it. What DeepSeek have done is it has open source its AI model. You can freely download it, no charge, completely free and legal. It also open source its training model. How it trains this model becomes open. So you can replicate. Not only that, it also open source the data in training that. The whole stack is open. Now, people like me doesn't have to spend millions of dollars in order to build a compute hub to train models. To train models, for example, OpenAI has spent about $3 to $4 billion. But DeepSeek trains model using $6 million US dollars, 6 million, compared with 2 or 3 billion, a fraction of the cost. And now they open source it. So people like me can download it and then run it. Although I will run a scaled down model so that I don't have to spend $30,000 on my hardware, but I can still run it. Now, if I go online, use online service, the Chinese cost is about 3% of the cost from the West. There's no competition. Maybe the quality is different. Yes, I agree. Maybe the quality is different. But for most people like me, I don't care. Maybe it will produce the answer in 100 words. This one is 200 words. And then I compare. Information is the same, but this is not written as beautiful as this one. So what? I don't care. I can pay for this one. Much cheaper. 1% of the cost or 3% of the cost, and I have the model running on my machine here. Not as good, yes, I know, but meets my needs. So AI is also losing to China at the moment. And this is going to speed up. EV vehicles, we now know that a company called BYD is now the world's largest producer of EV in the world. And China becomes the first first large exporters of cars since last year. Renewable energy, China is going to that, and then now China is moving into iron based battery. Lithium is history. China is moving away from lithium-based battery already. So battery technology is going to come down in price because iron is one of the most abundant elements in the world, most abundant metal in the world, basically. So the price will go down. We don't have to find lithium anymore. China is also leading in nuclear power research. Its commercial fusion reactor will be online probably this time next year, probably. And then China is also building small modular reactor, again using one of those waste products when they extract iron ore or aluminum ore or copper, which is called thorium. China has the amount of thorium to power the world for the next 100 years if they build the thorium reactor, because since it has been extracting ore, it has a lot of thorium as waste lumping into small mountains. I said one of the, in terms of research, the current, yes, the OpenAI CEO said that, no, it's the NVIDIA CEO said that. At the moment is the Chinese in China versus the Chinese overseas in terms of AI. That's a very strange situation. Like in terms of towards academic, recently, Trump has canceled the ability of Harvard to have international students and exchange programs. That is huge. That will seriously impact on Harvard's income because higher education is export. Foreign students coming in, spending money, paying tuition fees, these are all income. And then you are exporting higher education, exporting education. Trump is also killing that. So back to the main topics I want to address. This is all the background, okay? With all this background, Australia need to think, what is our position? What should we do as a country in this global environment? United States is very unpredictable. When it changes president, it will change its policy. For example, the Paris Climate Agreement. Trump withdrew from it. Biden re-enabled it. Trump now withdraw again. So even these international agreements, a signature from United States doesn't mean it will survive the next president. It will withdraw from that. So United States being a very unpredictable country, what should we do? I think in terms of strategy, we should have plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D. At least a number of possible scenarios. And then we'll think about how we can run a strategy through all these plans. No matter what happens, if plan A fails, our plan B may make use of what is valuable from plan A and use it. Unfortunately, again, our political system doesn't allow us to do that. We have 3 years, only 3 years. And then after 3 years, God knows what happened. We don't know. We don't know what happened after 3 years. And our prime minister is not going to plan for the next 3 years. He will be focused on these 3 years so that he can get re-elected in the next 3 years. Low long-term plans. We have an unpredictable superpower. For example, our beef, because of Morrison accusing China as the producer, the origin of COVID virus. So China stopped buying Australian beef. It has a huge impact on our farmers, of course. Now with the trade with United States, China come back and buy beef from us, and also buy liquefied natural gas, LNG. And then China signed a long-term port agreement, 15 years. That gives us stability. When we have stability, then our business can plan what to do next. But at the moment, we are selling what we can dig up from the ground. Obviously, this is unsustainable. We need to find a way to sustain our way of life, the quality of life here in Australia. By digging up, we used to be able to use aluminium oil ore to produce aluminium. But because our energy, although we are the producer of energy, our energy is expensive. This is ridiculous. Our energy here is more expensive than energy poor China. At the moment, 1 kilowatt hour costs me about 50 cents, 40 something, depending on whether it's peak or non-peak, but on average, it's about 40 cents. In China, translate to Australian dollars, is less than 10 cents. It's less than 10 cents. We can live very comfortably, a couple in China, very comfortable. In a flat, in an apartment, not a house, in an apartment. Eating the most fresh produce, keeping similar to our Australian lifestyle here. A couple, I think we can do it under 3,000 Australian dollars. Very, very comfortable. So for pensioners like me, I have always been tempted to go to China and retire. But I can't, because my root is now here. I can't sell my house and bring my daughter to China and get her to find the job again. No, I can't do that. So I'm stuck here. But if we were alone without children, we may be moving back to China and enjoy the rest of our life using Australian pensions. So I think, at least for us, we cannot compete in manufacturing. We don't have the population. We may compete in a few niche area in terms of research. So our CSIRO should concentrate on a few niche area and do our research. And that research need to have data input from the floor. So our country need to see what kind of industry we want to focus on. Maybe producing milk, producing beef, producing top-level pork and chicken, and then we focus on that. And then our CSIRO help in research in these areas to produce a better crops, better milk, etc., etc. I think every country in the world should start thinking like that. What is the competitive advantage of your country, including ours? The competitive advantage we have is we have clean air, clean environment, meaning our produce will be of the highest standard. And also we have the season advantage. We are in the southern hemisphere. We can, when our summer is their winter, when we have the best production, they have the least, and therefore we can use that seasonal advantage to ship fresh vegetables to China. China to here by ship is only 1 week. The current refrigeration technology should be able to keep our produce fresh within 1 week, for 1 week. And if China's Belt and Road initiative continues, then we will be able to see a high-speed rail link between Australia and China. If that happened, then our produce can go to China in less than 2 days. Then it opened up a whole new opportunity for us. At the moment, Thailand is making use of this opportunity. There's one very expensive fruit, dorine. Doesn't smell good, but it is a delicacy the Chinese enjoy. And because China has built a railway connecting China with Laos, Thailand is now shipping their dorines into Laos and then going through to China. And in China, the rent price suddenly, come on, my camera suddenly do its magic. Come back. Because of moving my hand, it take up my hand signals. So if we want to continue this, we shouldn't rely on US. US, first of all, is ever unpredictable like us. Secondly, its economy is in big trouble with Trump's tariffs against everyone else. Its two objectives cannot be achieved. The whole tariff war is a tactic, but we don't see its strategic point. What is the point? Killing its own US dollars as a major trading currency and reserve currency. That is stupid, very, very stupid. And bringing manufacturing back to US cannot be done within his term. Even within the next 3 presidents' term, it is still very unpredictable. Nobody is going to invest in it unless they are being a gun is pointing at the head. Otherwise, no, I don't think so. Okay. I think I open up. Anybody has any questions, please unmute yourself and you may ask me any question. Yes, anyone? No? Any supporter of US and want to argue against my argument? No? Okay. Then I will stop recording and then I will talk